Oleksandr Terentiyovych Honchar was a Ukrainian and Soviet writer and public figure fighting for the reinstatement of the Ukrainian culture in the Soviet society after its abolition by the establishment. He also was a veteran of the World War II and member of the Ukrainian parliament. Biography. Early years. Honchar was born in the village of Sukhar in Kobylyaki Uyezd, Poltava Governorate. The documents from the regional archives of Dnipropetrovsk region tell that he was born in family of factory workers in a village of Lomukha that, just before the World War II, was incorporated into the city of Dnipropetrovsk. His mother died when he was 3, while his father perished on a job site later in 1941. Being left parentless, he was taken by his maternal grandparents to live in the village of Sukhar, near Kobylyaki. Living with his maternal grandparents, Oleksandr took the last name and, thus, became to be known as Oles Honchar. Since 1925, Honchar studied first in his village, later in the village of Korishki. In 1933, he finished a 7-year school in the neighboring village of Broishika. After finishing the school, Honchar found a job with a local newspaper, Expanded Front. From 1933 to 1937, he studied journalism at the Kharkiv Vocational School of Nikolai Ostrovsky. After the study, Honchar worked as a teacher in a village of Manuelivka near Kharkiv, as well as a journalist in Kharkiv region newspaper, Lenin's Shift. In 1937 he started to publish his first works, mostly short stories, through various Republican publishers. Literary newspaper, Pioneer, Komsomolets of Ukraine, Young Bolshevik, World War II and First Recognition. In 1938, Honchar enrolled into the Department of Philology of Kharkiv University. During his study, he wrote such novellas as Ivan Mostovy, Cherries Bloom Eaglet, a story, Stoker's Overfield. On his third year at university, his study was interrupted by the World War II in June 1941 when he volunteered into the Red Army as part of a student battalion of the 72nd Guards Rifle Division. During the war, he was a staff sergeant and later the first sergeant of a mortar battery. Being wounded twice, Honchar also earned numerous awards, including the Soviet Order of Glory. During that time, he wrote poems that were published in 1985, as well as starting to work on his important future novel, Guidon Bearers. After the war, he resumed his studies in the Dnipropetrovsk University at the Department of Philology, where he started to write the first part of his first major work, Guidon Bearers to Alps. The novel was noticed by Yuri Yanovsky, who, being a chief editor of the magazine Fatherland, at that time published it in 1946. He soon invited Honchar to Kiev, where Oles entered an aspirantura at the Shevchenko Institute of Literature of National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. In Kiev, Honchar received an apartment in the specially designed Rolit building. Janovsky becomes a kind of a mentor for the young writer, who will extract a lot of creative lessons out of the communication with the maestro. Later in 1975, Honchar wrote a novel dedicating to him, Blue Towers of Janovsky. In 1947, Oles published a story, Earth is Rumbling, about the underground movement of the Poltava region, as well as the second book of the novel, Guidon Bearers, Blue Danube. The novel, which tells about the liberating mission of the Soviet Army in Europe, was noticed by officials and critics. The young writer received the recognition of authorities, critics, and, the most importantly, public. Further career and literature accolades. In 1940s and 1950s, the writer continued to develop a war theme in his several novellas, as well as publishing the last book of the Guidon Bearers trilogy, Golden, Prague. Along with his military themes, there started to sound a new one, a peaceful life of people and the moral aspects of the relationships. Novellas and novels in that direction prepare the future peaks of artistry for Honchar in 1960–70s. The historical revolutionary trilogy of Honchar, Tavria and Perekop, commemorating to the events of the civil war in the southern Ukraine, is being left as the weakest anemic work. Around that time Honchar was starting his public and journalistic activities. He was conducting some traveling abroad which resulted in books of very short stories, Meeting with Friends, China Up Close. For his literal work in 1959, Honchar was elected a chairman of the Union of Ukrainian Writers and a secretary of the USSR Union of Writers. In 1960, there was published the novel Person and Weapon, which opened a new page in the artistry of Oles Honchar. The romantic philosophical direction of the piece, the emphasis on intimate matters of life and death of a person, problems of indestructibility, of morality, of human spirit distinguished the novel that is based on the writer's recollections about the student, the volunteer battalion during the war times. The novel was awarded the newly created Shevchenko Prize in 1962. The second part of the trilogy, the novel Cyclone, was written after a break. The theme received a sudden continuation where the aged hero from Person and Weapon becomes a film director and shoots a movie about war, intertwining of reality and staged scenes of present and recollections about the past, as well as the very subject of cinematography reminds of Janowski's Master of Ship. The novel of short stories, Tronka, was the first major work of Honchar commemorating to a contemporary peaceful life, constructed in the form of an original wreath of novellas, revealing different aspects of life of ordinary people, residents of the Ukrainian steppes. The novel paints a complete panorama of characters, images, situations. In Tronka, for the first time in the Ukrainian literature was acutely posed the problem of Stalinism eradication, the struggle of old with new. On the wave of the Khrushchev thaw, the novel was awarded the Lenin Prize in 1964. Sobor and later career. Sad fate was destined for the next Honchar's novel Sobor. In comparison with Tronka, the novel is much more closer to the traditional realism with broadly distinct positive and negative characters. The struggle for the revival of spirituality, for the historical memory of people as the foundation of decency in relationships between people, is situated in the epicenter of story. The prototype of the cathedral in the novel served the Novomostov's Holy Trinity Cathedral. The Dnipropetrovsk region Communist Party leader Oleksandr Terentiyovych recognized himself in the image of a negative character, the Solis Party member, opportunist who deposited his father in a retirement home. Being a friend of Leonid Brezhnev, Terentiyovych requested a ban on the novel. The novel was published only in magazines, while the already printed copies of the book were confiscated and the translation to the Russian language was suspended. Despite the attempts to protect the piece, it was prohibited and the mentioning about it has ceased. The only thing that saved Honchar from further prosecutions was his position in the Writers' Union. In works of his later period, Honchar continued to raise the contemporary moral ethical subject of young searchers' romance. In 1980, he released the book Writer's Reflections, where he has summarized his artistic work. From 1962 to 1990, Honchar was a People's Deputy in the Supreme Council of the Soviet Union. In 1978, he was awarded the title of Academician and the membership at the Ukrainian Academy of Sciences. With the fall of the Soviet Union, Honchar was one of the creators of the Society of Ukrainian Language and the People's Movement of Ukraine. In 1990, he quit the Communist Party of Soviet Union. In 1991, Honchar released a new book, By That We Live. on the path of Ukrainian revival. In 1992, the University of Alberta recognized him as the honorary doctor. He also to be known as one who urged the President of Ukraine to rebuild the St. Michael's golden-domed cathedral in Kiev, which was destroyed by the Soviet authorities. Oles Honchar was buried at Bakovo Cemetery in Kyiv. Awards and prizes: Civil Stalin Prize for the first 2 books of the novel Guide on Bearers. Stalin Prize for the 3rd book of the novel Guide on Bearers. National Shevchenko Prize for novel Person and Weapon. Lenin Prize for novel Tronka. Hero of Socialist Labor for great achievements in development of Soviet literature, productive public work. And in regard to the 60th birthday of the writer Oles Honchar, by the order of the Presidium of the Supreme Council of the Soviet Union, USSR State Prize for novel Your Dawn. Hero of Ukraine, posthumously. Gold Medal of Alexander Fedyayev. Establishment Prize. Military Order of the Patriotic War, I degree. Order of Red Star. Order of Glory, 3 degree. Medal for Courage. Medal for Overtaking Belron. Major Works. Guide on Bearers. Sobor.